Hi, welcome to this week's sofa session where we've got David Manning from MIGSOLV, and we're going to discuss how the MIGSOLV and Speakill partnership is going to help businesses who are interested either private cloud or hybrid cloud deployments of their infrastructure, bring their servers to a place like the MIGSOLV data center and make real use of their hardware deployments. So David, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Can you tell us a little bit about MIGSOLV, the history, and what MIGSOLV can offer people who are interested in putting their servers into the data center?
Sure, yeah, thanks Tom. Okay, so MIGSOLV is a data center owner-operator. We have a site up here in Norwich, in Norfolk. And we are, I guess we've grown from being a straightforward co-location operator, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, to being more of a full-service kind of IT services provider. We have a range of complementary services that sit alongside the co-location element. We deliver levels of security here that are very difficult to achieve on-premise for most customers. In terms of the underlying infrastructure, the whole data center is designed and operated to be what we call N+1 redundant, and that really means that we have one more of generators and UPS and cooling systems than we actually need to deliver 100% availability to the clients. Connectivity is really a key element to most customers' deployment. The support is really key for us and really key for our customers. And then alongside that, of course, we're very much into the cloud deployment. So the work that Speakill does and the ecosystem that Speakill will help us create is really important in addressing the challenges that most businesses, most CIOs are facing with regards to what do they do with cloud deployments, what's the best use for cloud for them, is it going to be private cloud, is it going to be public, is it going to be some kind of hybrid infrastructure? And indeed, how does that work with the current co-location deployment? So what we're trying to create within MIGSOLV is we describe it as an ecosystem of key partners and really people that are really very much at the forefront of the sort of developments within their own space, and with a really proven track record to be able to deliver their key services alongside those others that are more traditional that we also deliver. So.
Excellent. Thanks, David. Thank you very much for the introduction to MIGSOLV there. So I guess for people who don't know Speakill, we should talk a little bit about Speakill. We are a services provider based in the southeast of England, just outside of Norwich. We've been around for a number of years now, providing support for large-scale data deployments, application support, and more recently, OpenStack and Canonical's MAS infrastructure support. And so, we believe in making life easier for end users, in simplifying deployments so that, the customers can focus on doing the stuff that actually generates some revenue, doing the stuff that generates money, or bringing more stability to the platform. And so, that's what we do. And in partnership with MIGSOLV, certainly in the southeast of the UK, we can provide to our London-based customers, a very quick service in terms of data connectivity with London itself, but also for people who are interested in hybrid cloud deployments, also private cloud to public cloud connectivity. We can do a lot to make that as fast and as seamless as possible.
Yeah, I think between the two organisations, we've got the underlying infrastructure and some of the services. And to give you an idea, I think in terms of sort of a round trip delay from where we are down into say central London, we're talking about kind of 4 milliseconds, which is a very fast response time, and I think is ideal for the types of deployments that we are seeing, continue to see, and for clients both London-based, southeast, and maybe even more regionally. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I can fully see how the infrastructure that you guys have deployed here in terms of connectivity with other data centers and stuff would certainly help people. I think that brings us on to an interesting discussion topic about the way that cloud deployments are going these days.
Yep.
There's an awful lot of people who stick all their resources into AWS or GCE and that type of thing.
Sure.
And certainly for the small deployments, it adds flexibility. It can make life easier. You don't require a team of people to keep your servers up and running. But it doesn't hide the fact that when you look at the numbers, in terms of paying for an AWS server for a decent amount of time versus sticking, 4, 5, 6, 10, 100 servers into MIGSOLV, the difference in cost is quite dramatic for long-running sort of workloads that you can count on.
No, I mean that's very true, Tom. I think what certainly the message that we're hearing from business leaders and business customers is that one of the things that they often struggle with is recognising accurately the full costs of some public cloud deployments. And I think that gives some organisations an issue. Yes, it's very flexible. Yes, there's an awful lot of benefit, and I think you've spoken about some of that. Certainly for the smaller organisations, as things begin to scale, then they're finding the cost quite difficult to predict going forwards. Taking that infrastructure and putting that into MIGSOLV gives you a single fixed monthly bill for the duration of the contract. And that is, very appealing. Talking to CFOs about, forecasting, planning, looking at their business models moving forward, doing a 3-year or a 5-year plan. That's a very attractive element to have to, understanding where their IT and where the likely costs are going to be moving forward. So
yeah, it's good to have a nice fixed idea. I know from using the AWS calculator, it is pretty tricky to get something, especially in pounds, that we can relate to. I think also just for viewers understanding, there's obviously a whole bunch of different options when it comes to deploying stuff into into data centers.
Yeah.
One is just putting stuff onto a bunch of servers, fixed workloads on there. Similarly, though, the stuff that we're interested in working with customers is the hybrid and private cloud strategies. So, customers who are used to using AWS, what we want to be able to offer them is the ability for them to have a similar experience, but on their own infrastructure, on their own hardware, effectively in their own data center.
Within the data center,
and they can come down, they can see the servers because it's their hardware,
it's physically
so they
there,
can come and observe the security measures that are in place. They can understand how it all works. But certainly for companies who currently deploy stuff into the public cloud, a hybrid cloud strategy for times where they've got long-running workloads. Some of the stuff that we do with research organizations, they spin the servers up and they have them running for years, 3, 4, 5-year projects. Running that in AWS when they're pretty static doesn't seem like a great way of being able to, to spend money effectively.
Sure.
So having a hybrid cloud strategy where, researchers who want short runtime servers can spin stuff up in AWS, but then have the same connectivity, the same services, and access to the same data that they do in their private cloud server and server infrastructure certainly seems to be a good way of spreading the load and also, just keeping track of your costs.
Yeah, I think I certainly agree with you around the hybrid environment. I think that suits a lot of organisations. I think there is, we certainly are not talking to many organisations that are 100% committed into the public cloud. And that could be for reasons of, often it's legacy IT, things that they can't work out how to cloud enable them, I think. But alongside that, you do benefit on the sort of hybrid approach with, the ultimate flexibility of, expansion on a smaller scale to a public cloud infrastructure, but having the core assets deployed in a data center and managed on a more fixed cost basis, and that's from discussions that we've been having with business leaders, that certainly seems to be a method that's getting a lot of traction and certainly getting a lot of interest from those that hold the purse strings.
And in also just moving on slightly to a private, like purely the private cloud, is something that you just touched upon there, where some businesses with legacy infrastructure,
Yep.
deploy their applications directly to a server that's in a rack, maybe in their own business environment, or maybe in a data center already, but just it's not in a cloud-based deployment. You don't have to want to go to the public cloud to make use of some of this stuff.
No, sure.
Being able to deploy workloads into a rack in MIGSOLV in a purely private cloud environment, but giving end users the ability to spin up virtual machines or virtualized infrastructure and condense their, we were talking earlier about the environmental impact and the amount of power being used by servers. If you can virtualize these servers and stick more workloads into a single unit in a rack, then that obviously reduces costs for the consumer, reduces electricity consumption,
environmental impact, and so on and so forth.
Impact goes down. So it's interesting. There's so many different ways to be able to deploy these workloads at the moment. That there's plenty for businesses to be able to consider, and come and talk to companies like ours for that type of deployment.
You know what? You're absolutely correct. I think part of the strength in the partnership that we have is the very fact that through us we've got the underlying infrastructure and we've got the ability to host up to organisations of large scale, as well as all of those in between. What we've got through the partnership with Speakill is, I think, a different approach that allows you and us to help guide customers into what their future deployment could look like, to accurately model costs on where they're going to be in 2, 3, 4 or 5 years time, and to really understand sort of the new and underlying technologies through some of your supply chain partners that you can bring in as well to help scale and architect and ultimately deliver a solution that meets the customer's business needs. I think it's really powerful.
I mean, talk about supply chain partners. I mean, for people who don't know what OpenStack is or have never heard of MAS, both are hardware orchestration engines. And so OpenStack originally came from Rackspace and NASA as a collaboration and then got open sourced. Has since been picked up by Red Hat and Canonical as being the lead developers on the platform itself. And so, backed by, high-powered, technology firms. And so the development is ongoing, and certainly for larger deployments or more complex deployments, we have the ability to fall back into the services provided by Canonical for support for the OpenStack deployments. So, it is very much a multi-tiered approach that we're trying to bring to the data center here in terms of the support services as well. So if you're a big firm, I don't think there's too many issues in terms of getting the support in place 24/7 from you guys, and then obviously second and third line support from the vendors themselves.
Absolutely, totally agree. I mean, I think to me, it seems like a natural evolution of that ecosystem and a kind of expansion of the ecosystem to deliver, larger scale cloud deployments and to help organisations and potentially some quite large organisations to rationalise cost, understand their infrastructure, right size it with you guys, but still benefit from a full 24/7 support, as you say, either through us on a first line and with really dedicated second or third level support. So a number of, I think, quite significant advantages there.
So to sort of wrap up this video, we're now going to talk about the services that we can provide if viewers are interested in taking this further. How does that onboarding process look? How do we get people migrated into the data center and into a cloud-based environment? So I guess if you want to take it away, David.
Yeah. I mean, the initial approach for us would be, we always operate sort of open book. So we would go and meet with the customer and do the fact-finding missions with yourselves. So that's to really understand what the client's roadmap looks like, what the current infrastructure environment is, if they're largely set into a public cloud infrastructure, for instance, through the dedicated interconnects into those platforms that we already have, to explain that, there is a way forwards. If they're looking at, bringing alternative cloud technologies and creating a hybrid strategy, or the customer's got legacy, if we term it, IT issues that they're kind of, wondering how they can benefit from the services within the data center. They can bring those services in through, working with you. You can put together the sort of the long-term vision and the architecture as it moves forward, and then begin to give the customer the confidence and the comfort that can be a seamless transition for the business to deliver the business outcomes that they're really looking for. And that could be pulling some stuff back from private cloud, but maintaining the burst capability maybe. It could be putting an additional private cloud infrastructure in. I think all of those things are possible, and it becomes a very consultative exercise, which we would start clearly in through an open partnership with the three, so the client, yourselves, and ourselves.
I think some of the things you touched upon there are very relevant, and certainly one of the things that we often see when we're talking to existing public cloud users, because it's easy to spin up infrastructure, they've got virtual servers strewn around different areas,
right.
And are they making best use of the hardware that they already have?
Sure.
Because if you've got different teams using different servers, actually, using virtualization on physical hardware, can you bring that together into, actually sticking 4 or 5 different virtual servers onto a single server rather than running all these different bits and pieces, racking up more costs.
Right.
So it's not necessarily a one-to-one transition, is it?
Sure.
It can quite often be a sort of
no, it can be sort of a part consolidation,
exercise.
I think, and with consolidation generally comes some commercial benefits. But I think it's also benefiting from what else exists within the ecosystem. So you touched a little bit about support. We can deliver a full service 24/7 service wrap for the customer on the new infrastructure, deployed in a different environment, saving the customer more money. Aligning himself with his business objectives, and just making the CTO's board minutes just that little bit easier, So, that's really, we're very much about working with partnerships, but we're very much working in partnerships with our clients to deliver what they want to see as the outcome.
I think, one of the other things that we can certainly offer as well is we talk about the support aspect.
Yep.
And so businesses have different ideas of support. And so certainly what businesses can do is come and put their servers into the data center. We can help with the onboarding process, configuration. We can give them training, and if they can go on their way and largely maintain the hardware and software themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But similarly, using the support services as well. If customers are already using the public cloud and like the fact that they can click a button and have a server appear, and click another button and have another server appear, and they don't care about anything that's underneath. That type of design pattern can work as well, can't it? Where customers tell us what their budget is, what their hardware requirements are. We stick it all together, we stand it up, and from their perception, it still looks like AWS. It does exactly the same stuff. And it just allows them to be able to build something, set and forget, but within the private, more secure environment. like MIGSOLV as well.
Absolutely. And I think you've touched on a very valuable point there. Working within the customer's financial constraints, whatever their envelope of spend is. Yes, absolutely. You have to work within that. Otherwise, clearly, you're not delivering the service and the solution that they're looking for. But there is more than one way to deliver the underlying service, and I think it's about getting the right blend of services, solutions, support at the right cost. And I really believe that the partnership that we have, and the other elements of the ecosystem that we've already spoken about really do deliver that. We've got some good some good opportunity, I think, to really help customers on their kind of transformation journey. And you're right, the 24/7 support is available. That's something that's not available in a lot of public cloud infrastructures. That allows potentially the customer to redeploy staff into other areas to deliver other business benefits. Because for most organisations, I think what we shouldn't forget is that IT is a business enabler. It isn't what they do as the business. It allows the business to function. So it's as critical there as potentially having the physical building, for instance, to in which they house staff. It's part of the underlying infrastructure that makes that business tick. And if they can redeploy resources that are tied up, maybe fairly costly in supporting it, to deploy them into other areas of sort of business development or other areas where they see more value, then I think that performs a great business case.
Yeah, and similarly, if you're coming from a public cloud aspect and you're a small business that has a lot of infrastructure, but you don't want to have to suddenly start employing a whole bunch of systems administrators and what have you, there's a lot of businesses out there that do that type of thing, because you're right, in terms of the way businesses are structured, IT generally doesn't actually make them money. It's just something that they have to do.
IT is generally a cost centre, right?
Yeah. And so, if businesses are in the public cloud and are interested in migrating to private, they don't necessarily have to go, okay, we're going to have to employ systems administrators left, right and centre to make this actually happen.
And I do wonder whether that is, some of the underlying sort of, concern about moving infrastructure from one environment to another, or creating that kind of hybrid environment with burst capability and some core services elsewhere. But I think through the relationship that we have and the technology and the understanding experience that Speakill can bring to that overall kind of objective, I think there's a lot that can be done very cost effectively, for an awful lot of businesses. So.
Excellent. Thanks for watching this session with myself and David. David, if they want to find out more about MIGSOLV and how they can sort of potentially move their stuff into your data center, what's the best place for them to go and find out more?
It's just the first place to go is probably the website. So if you go to migsolv.com, you'll find all the appropriate contact details and phone numbers on there.
Excellent. Thank you very much. If you need to know more about Speakill and also how we can help migrate stuff across, if you go to speakill.co.uk, there's a page on private cloud infrastructure and how we can sort of help you guys move your data into a more cost-effective and work-friendly environment like MIGSOLV. So thank you very much for watching.